There is a call for dialogue from the international community, from our own spiritual leaders.
Tumekubali mwito wa vikundi mbalimbali hapa nchini na wananchi wa Kenya kwamba tusimamishe maandamano yetu kuanzia Jumatatu hii.
Tactical retreat. CORD suspends Monday protest but plans major Uhuru Park rally.
I have sometimes wondered whether by bringing my name, he assumed that there would be attempts to reach out to him.
Everyone versus Geoffrey Kiplagat. Now lawyer Katwa Kigan disowns to know his accuser. Mandera Hospital overwhelmed as cholera spreads, leaving 10 dead.
Amesema wao hawajaenda shule kwa sababu najua hii mambo ya kitamaduni.
And breaking barriers, Maasai mother fights to educate 2 out of 41 children. Hello there, welcome to KTN Prime. Thank you for joining us. I'm Linda Ogutu, our fan language interpreter. Tonight, at the bottom end of your screen, is Meresha Owiti. Let's begin this bulletin with the focus on the protests that have been held with respect to IEBC, and the Kenyan opposition coalition CORD has suspended its weekly protest against the Electoral Commission for a week to pave way for a dialogue with the government and other stakeholders. CORD Management Committee co-chair Senators James Orengo and Johnson Muthama indicated that they will be expecting the ruling Jubilee coalition to constitute their dialogue team before the end of next week to avoid a resumption of the protests. KTN's Chris Tyro reports.
These are some of the scenes that have been rocking various parts of the country every Monday for the last 1 month. Police officers engaging CORD supporters and their leaders in running battles as they try to forcefully evict electoral commissioners from office. CORD had defied calls from the international community and religious leaders to postpone the demonstrations and give dialogue a chance. But after the Monday demos resulted into 3 deaths, CORD has set aside next Monday for the victims.
Temporarily suspend demonstrations that were scheduled for next Monday, 30th May 2016, to give dialogue and peace a chance. Instead of holding demonstrations on Monday, we shall hold forums to condole with the bereaved and comfort the wounded ones.
There is a call for dialogue from the international community, from our own spiritual leaders, and from the civil society.
CORD has given the Jubilee coalition a 1-week ultimatum to come up with the names of individuals who will represent the coalition at the dialogue table, or else see the protest continue.
Our principals will, a maximum of 3 days, able to announce the team that will be put in place for negotiations.
But a crisis already looms even before dialogue is initiated. Although Jubilee leaders have welcomed the calls for dialogue, they still insist that the dialogue process must be based on the existing institutions in the country, including Parliament, a move that CORD seems to oppose.
We have said all along we're willing to talk through the avenues of the law. In fact, the President himself said, if you want to remove these people, not through demonstrations.
We are not going to do things as if Parliament is the sole sovereign. The Constitution says that only a section of that power is given to Parliament.
Meanwhile, the opposition has planned to hold a parallel rally at Uhuru Park grounds on June 1st during Madaraka Day celebrations, while President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to lead the national celebrations at Afraha Stadium in Nakuru. The coalition has notified police of their plan and has asked The coalition has notified police of their plan and has asked for adequate security. And with that move, the ball now squarely lies on the Jubilee side of the coalition. Will they heed to calls made by CORD and go ahead and form a special team that will initiate dialogue, given the hard stance that they continue to hold? Chris Dairo, KTN News.
So the Kenyan opposition court is demanding dialogue over the Electoral Commission, and the ruling Jubilee coalition insists the dialogue must be based on legally established institutions. But the question remains, what exactly does court want to dialogue over? And what items would Jubilee accept in the agenda of the so-called structured dialogue? KTN's Murimi Mwangi put these very questions to the two opposing coalitions. Listen in.
As the court brigade takes a break from the protests next week, a fresh controversy is brewing between the two coalitions over the structure and arbitration manner of the IEBC stalemate.
This is a matter that needs to be discussed at very high levels so that an agreement is reached outside and you just bring it to the parliament after building consensus.
This dialogue that is preconditioned on certain ultimatums or preconditioned on a predetermined outcome where there's a process within the law is not what we're party to. The rule of law must always transcend the rule of man.
On one hand, the court team is demanding for the all-inclusive, structured dialogue, bringing together the two coalitions, the civil society, and other non-state actors. Court does not want Parliament to arbitrate the IEBC stalemate. Jubilee, on the other hand, still insists that a decision over the structure and composition of the dialogue panel must be made within the confines of the law, and as such should only be set in motion by Parliament. Mukurweini MP Kabando Wakabando says excluding Parliament from the dialogue process is tantamount to expressing disdain and contempt against a critical constitutional organ. But court disagrees.
Parliament can provide the platform and hopefully will provide the platform, because any other discussion you have, wherever else you do it, will still have to come to Parliament for enactment.
This is an incompetent parliament, the 11th parliament, and I sit in it, and I will tell you for a fact. And therefore, you cannot wait for this parliament to be able to pass a legislation that is of value to the people of Kenya.
The current IBC is a player number 12 in the soccer match. In other words, we are not playing with 11 members from the opposite side.
The constitution is clear. Nikijaribu kuwafukuza, watanipeleka kotini, koti itawarudisha iseme fuata taratibu.
But with the court team demanding the exit of the current IEBC commissioners before the talks begin, the next 7 days will no doubt be a tense moment for the Isaac Hassan-led team.
We will be setting a dangerous precedent if every time we disagree with the decision, we seek the removal from office of those we don't agree with.
Now, with Jubilee's acceptance of dialogue coming on the same day that the court coalition demanded the transfer of senior police chiefs in Nyanza, the arbiters of the IEBC stalemate no doubt have an even more daunting task, resolving the standoff in the wake of the growing demands by both coalitions. Murimi Mwangi, KTN News, in Nairobi.
So there has been a lot of debate on the IEBC question. Court is demanding dialogue. Jubilee coalition insists that dialogue must be based on legally established institutions. On a big question tonight, we're asking you, do you support Jubilee's demand that dialogue over IEBC must be done through Parliament? Do you support Jubilee's demand that dialogue over IEBC must be done through Parliament? Tweet us at KTN News, at KTN Kenya. Tweet me as well at Lindo Gutu. I'll be sampling your views during this bulletin. It should be an interesting conversation focusing on the latest events in the last couple of weeks. Health facilities in Mandera County are struggling to contain the influx of patients hit by the new cholera outbreak that has claimed 10 lives so far. At least 721 people are said to be affected since the first case reported in mid-April. Dorcas Wangira reports.
Every minute since mid-April and counting, since cholera started ravaging Mandera County matters, this improvised cholera beds must be made in good time They're not the required standard for a spreading epidemic, but what else can be done where 10 have died since and at least 720 are affected? They are also part of the visual affirmation of the cost of cholera in a parched county with erratic water supply and inadequate facilities. The outbreak has been traced to a traveler said to have come from either Nairobi or Wajir and worked in a restaurant. May 25th, Wednesday, AMREF, in an official statement released to the press, established the situation as dire. The state of sanitation is critical. Cholera patients are being housed in a maternity shelter that was built by donors at the Mandera County Referral Hospital. The capacity of 50 crowded with 58 patients, more outside, drips hanging from trees. The county government health executive says they are trying, working closely with Médecins Sans Frontières. A temporary cholera treatment center has been set up at the same hospital to contain the growing numbers. 83, they say, 63 said to be at the isolation ward.
We have written to the private clinics, that they should not attend to any diarrheal cases, and all diarrhea cases should be referred. Because once a patient is seen at the private clinic, it's very difficult for anybody to do contact tracing. We embarked on now treating the water sources, treating the means of transport of those water, the water boozers.
The World Health Organization estimates that only 10% of cholera cases are confirmed, duly diagnosed and documented. Treating cholera and containing the epidemic is costly. Doctors say vaccination could make a big difference, especially in endemic areas. Already there is a World Health Organization recommended cholera vaccine that ranges from 700 to 1,000 shillings in chemists, effective for 5 years but should be administered orally at least after 2 years.
You just open it, peel it open, and you drink it.
AMREF is proposing an intervention worth 25 million shillings to meet the cost of health promotion, purchase of supplies for prevention and treatment such as water purification tablets and medicine, lab supplies and personnel.
Proper water supply, proper latrines. What is the next thing? So you have the role of the government, you have the role of the individual to take care of himself.
It is feared that the epidemic will continue to spread if it is not contained as it should. But it's not just a matter of time, but choosing prevention over reacting to a spreading epidemic. Dorcas Wangira, KTN News.
Let's now focus on the Tunoi Tribunal. Lawyer Kato Keegan has denied allegations made by former journalist Geoffrey Kiplagat that he received a big brown briefcase stashed with 200 million shillings bribe on behalf of Supreme Court Judge Philip Tunoi. The money was allegedly meant to influence the outcome of a petition challenging the election of Dr. Evans Kidero as the governor of Nairobi. Patrick Omimo has more.
I, Katwa Kigen Joseph, swear by the Almighty God that...
Katwa Kigen is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. But here, Katwa was facing allegations from former journalist Geoffrey Kiplagat that he played a key role in the alleged 200 million shillings bribery scandal that is facing Justice Philip Tunoi of the Supreme Court.
The whole claim that I facilitated the logistics of the exchange of this money is completely untrue.
In his affidavit sworn on November 22, 2014, Geoffrey Kiplagat claims Katwa Kigen drove Justice Philip Tunoi to a petrol station in Westlands where money exchanged hands. The deal was allegedly hammered on the 27th August 2014, 2 days before the Supreme Court delivered a verdict on a petition challenging the election of Dr. Evans Kidero as the governor of Nairobi. Katwa has denied the claim.
That Kiprop alighted and walked with a very heavy big brown briefcase, which he gave to Katwa Kigen, that is yourself, from the driver's door. Do you recall receiving any big brown briefcase from Mr. Kiprop Chirchir, your client?
That incident never happened.
He then goes on to state that after delivering the briefcase, he drove the VX to a parallel position to enable the judge and the governor wave at each other and ensure that it was not a hoax. Do you recall this incident taking place?
It never took place.
Did it take place?
It never took place.
He says the judge, who was a passenger in your vehicle, told the governor, who was a passenger in Mr. Kiprop Chirchir's vehicle, the following: "Si unaona ni mimi mwenyewe." Do you recall that?
No.
Do you recall the judge uttering those words whilst a passenger in your vehicle?
Well, the judge was not in my favor, so there is no question of him having been told that, at least in my presence.
Kato was put to task to explain why he never took legal action against Kiplagat after the bribery allegations became public early this year.
Did you react as far as Mr. Kiplagat was concerned in relation to the allegations that he had made? Did you ever?
In reacting, of course, I was offended, but then I should imagine it is understandable if I were to say that I restrained myself from calling him, because if I were to call him, there was the risk that it would be seen like I'm trying to persuade him to abandon an allegation against me, so I didn't contact him.
What would be your explanation? He is someone who's you are good to him, to assist him. Why would he make such serious allegations against you? None affidavit.
That's a question that has really perplexed me, and I have sometimes wondered whether by bringing my name, he assumed that there would be attempts to reach out to him and ask him to abandon his claim in consideration of one thing or the other. That is the nearest explanation I can give for these extremely wild allegations against me. I would really like to meet him and ask him. I haven't spoken with him since these allegations came out.
The tribunal later held a closed-door session with lawyer Kato Kigen as he had requested. This tribunal resumes its sittings Tuesday next week. But then, on Friday, the Court of Appeal will deliver a ruling on the retirement age for judges, which might as well affect the deliberations at this tribunal. Patrick Amimo, KTN News, Nairobi.
You're watching KTN Prime. Thank you for staying with us. Our big story tonight focuses on IEBC protests and calls for dialogue. So tonight we're asking you, do you support Jubilee's demand that dialogue over IEBC must be done through Parliament? Tweet us at KTN News, at KTN Kenya. You can tweet me directly as well at Linda Ogutu. Nathan_Aurora says, yes, the Constitution stipulates that IEBC issues need to be solved through Parliament. At Fazul says it's a bad precedent to circumvent our 5-year-old Katiba by mass action. No to dialogue. Finally, being Charlie says, oh, well, let's give it a try. Nobody ever died over dialogue. Keep tweeting us. Keep sending your messages. I'll sample them during this bulletin. Let's stay with us. Let's now focus on a quote-unquote feel-good kind of story. You'll understand what I'm talking about in a minute. And it's an inspiring story on matters of education. Now, one woman in Narok, Nesiasi Ngoyo in Narok County, has managed to convince her 110-year-old husband to start educating their children. That may sound simple enough until you consider that there are 41 children in that family and only 2 have been to school. Nesiasi's 27-year-old son is now in class 8. Lofty Matambo has the story.
It's 6 a.m. in Narok's Nkututu village. The rays of the sun reminding any pupil that it's time to be heading to school. But the narrative is quite different in the village. Jesse and Laban are happy and contented milking their cows as opposed to being in school. Their father feels proud of how his 2 last-born children are falling in love with the livestock by the day. Mzengonyo is 110 years old. He has 41 children born to 5 wives. 37 of them have ended up being livestock keepers, with the girls getting married off at a tender age. Noah is one of the sons who were forced to look after their livestock. He's now 27 and living with regrets.
Tumzima kama mimi bado kwa shule ya msingi. Nimesoma shule ya msingi ya Nkutoto. Ndio niko na darasa la 8.
However, Ngonyo's last wife, Nesiasi, has exhibited some extraordinary ability to get around Ngonyo's ways of bringing up their children. She has managed to convince Ngonyo to be selling at least 1 animal per term after agreeing to educate their last 4 children.
Jambo hao nyakombele yangu wajaenda shule kwa sababu shule ilikuwa mbali, na kama mzee kama huyo sasa yeye kuwa anajua maana ya shule, sasa alikuwa anakataza watoto waende shule.
Nesiasi is 55, but she believes she can drive change in the family.
Amesema wao wajaenda shule kwa sababu najua hii mambo ya kitamaduni na kukataza na watu kuwajua masomo hapo mbeleni. Mama ndio heri, ndio anaenda kumhoji yeye, kumbembeleza, kumwongea naye.
John is full of praises for his mother.
Naitwa John. Joel Konyo, Amasai. Mimi ni mtoto wa miaka 19, nasomea shule ya JKUAT mwaka kwanza, Field of IT. Najua tu niko shule, kwenda kumwelezea tu niko kama kitu naitwa university. Ajui zaidi ya hiyo. Sasa ndio huenda kuzungumzia mambo na school fees itakuwa sasa ni tatisho kwa kukataa kusema kuuza ng'ombe. Wanapenda ng'ombe kuliko masomo.
Mesiasi hopes for better days ahead for her young ones.
Amesema shule ilikuwa mbali sana, mtoto kupata miaka 6, 7 ndiye alikuwa anakwenda shule kwa sababu ya umbali wake.
Bweni zinaweza kuboresha hali ya elimu katika shule na kusababisha watoto zaidi.
Vijana badala ya kusafiri kilomita mingi wakitafutia mifugo nyasi, waweze kukaa shule wasome.
Though the pastoralist communities within Narok have always valued livestock above all else, Mesiasi hopes the journey to liberation has begun for her children, however long it will take. Noah is in primary school and his young brother John is a first-year student in campus.
It's a cry that has been given deaf ears over the years, the cry of the boy child. But perhaps this is the high time that the boy child is ready to liberate himself from culture and traditions. Lofty Matambo, KTN News from Narok County.
She simply refused to give up and is building a future for her children. Nice. KTN sister station Radio Maisha today celebrated its 6th birthday. Radio Maisha has been growing in leaps and bounds since its inception in 2010. Well, the celebration today brought together the voices behind the popular radio station and administrators. Company CEO Sam Shiley lauded the station's impressive growth, terming it as a phenomenal success.
Pamoja on the hand, tupe mbele pamoja. Kata. Na mimi kata. Bwana mnaona wawiti. Kata ingine.
Right, let's look at business news. Not very good news. Kenyans are staring at a heavier tax burden from the start of 2016-2017 financial year. That is, unless the government finds new ways to broaden her tax base and rope in more taxpayers. According to tax experts from consulting house PwC, the government needs to adopt modern tax laws to boost tax collection to meet the country's ever-growing budget needs, which presently stands at 2.05 trillion shillings. KTN's Abiagina delves into what are the low-hanging fruits the taxman may be eyeing to make this a reality.
Kenya has been taking quick steps to enhance our competitiveness in the region, as a result of which the Jubilee administration has rolled out several big-ticket projects to improve the doing business environment.
We see that PAYE is still the biggest contributor of taxes to the Kenyan economy, and that's also been followed by a very strong performance by VAT.
But tax experts are worried about the fast-growing budget deficit, now pegged at 6.9%.
If you look at some of the ratios, if you remove PAYE and you look at the ratio of collection of corporate income tax to the GDP and compare it to some of our counterparts like Ethiopia or Rwanda, you'll find that somewhat we are lagging behind.
This, they say, could see Treasury pursue tough revenue-raising measures, including raising taxes or introducing new ones, all which would ultimately have to be passed on to consumers by businesses hitting them hard.
In Kenya's situation, so if you have, say, employee taxes then contributing the highest amount as far as the collections are concerned, it doesn't seem to follow the global trend. And obviously then what that means is that it's quite volatile in the sense that any adjustments in relation to people being employed then directly affects our collections as a country.
With a whooping budget of 2.05 trillion shillings, the current fiscal deficit stands at roughly 522.3 billion shillings, leaving about 1.5 trillion shillings to be raised by the Kenya Revenue Authority. The government currently raises a bulk of its tax through income tax and value-added tax. According to PwC, more focus needs to be placed on the extractive sector and rental income if enough revenue is to be raised to bridge the gap. Abiagina, KTN Business.
So, like many other cities globally, Nairobi has recently been hard hit by various chronic shocks and stresses like floods, collapsing structures, terrorism attacks and disease outbreak, which have wreaked havoc and put the city on high alert. Kenya's capital has now joined the 100 Resilient Cities from Africa initiative, supported by the Rockefeller Foundation, that is dedicated to helping cities around the world become more adept at handling challenges and disasters that are a growing part of the 21st century.
The real way to make a city more resilient is to have that long-term view. You won't see necessarily things next week or the week after, but to think about how to improve citizens' access to basic services, to transportation, to the natural environment, how to promote community cohesion where neighbors check on neighbors, where they have strong institutions. Those are the things that differentiate cities that are able to withstand shocks and stresses and those that aren't.
So apart from providing the resources which the city will provide, this year alone we've put 2% of our total budget for citizen engagement. And we will be engaging citizens directly through the resilience strategy on building resilience.
Technology-driven taxi operator Uber and Citibank today announced a partnership that will give driver partners and business investors access to the vehicles they need to start or grow their Uber-based businesses. This comes shortly on the back of Uber reaching 1 million rides taken in Kenya since its launch in August 2015. The groundbreaking vehicle access initiative includes a vehicle finance component delivered through Citibank and a vehicle leasing solution made available through Zohari Leasing. The initiative is valued at a total of approximately 10 billion, which will be released by Centum Investment Group through its subsidiaries Cidian and Zohari over the next 3 years.
Requirement for this product to apply. We're going to announce the start of the Vehicle Solutions Program and the creation of a 10 billion shilling vehicle finance credit facility for better loans for top Uber partner drivers, so then they have the opportunity to increase their chances for better earnings.
So Martin Odoro Tieno has been appointed non-executive director at the East African Breweries Limited. Prior to his appointment, Martin Odoro served as partner financial services at Deloitte East Africa between May 2013 and December 2015, where he was taken up as an independent business advisor and executive coach at East African Breweries in January 2016. His appointment took effect on 24th of May. In the Kenya Premier League midweek fixtures, AFC Leopards settled to a 2-2 draw with Tusker FC, while Gor Mahia secured an impressive 2-0 win over Sofapaka. Take a look at what happened. National Championships trials, which will start on Thursday at the Kasarani Stadium. The three-day event will be used to select the team for the 20th Africa Senior Athletics Championships to be held in Durban.
The traditional way of picking our team will be 1-2 across the line, forms the team, and the third slot is left to the panel of selectors where they'll be able to pick the best. Doping. Basically, this is a government procedure. And given that we are not members of parliament, we cannot be able to give much. But we are hoping that they rise to the occasion. This is about Kenya. It's not about athletics Kenya. It's about sportsmen, young men and young women of this nation. And we are urging the members of parliament to look at it squarely and be able to include all those clauses that were left out so that Kenya, at the end of the day, will be pronounced compliant. We are so particular about this, and we are very optimistic, given that the process is driven by the biggest office in this country.
So, do you support Jubilee's demand that dialogue over IEBC must be done through Parliament? That was our big question tonight. Iokumu says discussion should be done by sober Kenyans outside, then taken to Parliament for enactment. Rogers_Ganda says those giving the Parliament narrative should give us an exclusivity as to how Court's proposal is out of place. At Abala Kane says dialogue is the best way to go on the IEBC matter. What I don't trust is Parliament to actualize the same. Maurice Rogo says yes to dialogue. The Parliament is a bit partial and can't pull out this job. Kenya is important, more important than individuals. Noah Kirui says Parliament is the decision maker in our country, so it's an issue that should pass through Parliament. Finally, Ngeno Kipkorir says I totally support Jubilee government. IEBC issues need to be resolved through Parliament. Your feedback on our big question tonight on whether or not you support Jubilee's demand that dialogue over IEBC must be done through Parliament. People, that is where we wrap up KTN Prime. Thank you so much for watching us and indeed for staying with me for the last hour or so. For those of you on KTN News, the last word begins right now. So here's what you need to know. The ESCC has released a report indicating that some head teachers are having a field day with the government's free education fund. That is the conversation that Sophia Wanuna is having in just a few minutes on the last word. She will be hosting the author of that particular report, that is Vincent Okongo. He's the Director of Preventive Services at the ESCC. That is a conversation you want to listen to, especially if you're a parent with children in school. Good night, people. See you tomorrow.